This Week in Radio Tech, episode 289, is brought to you by Axia Desk and Rack IP audio mixing consoles, 6-fader AOIP consoles with big console features, by the family of Zipstream audio processors and stream encoders, including the astounding Zipstream 9X2, and by Lavo and the Crystal Clear Virtual Radio Console. Crystal Clear is the console with a multi-touch touchscreen interface. Radio production and distribution in its newest forms is the world of Sheri Barclay. She's a producer and test engineer at Zeno Radio. Her latest project there, Zeno Live, connects hosts and listeners like never before. Plus, Sheri reveals the struggles building her own internet station that has a storefront location. Hey, welcome into This Week in Radio Tech. It's episode 289. I'm Kirk Harnack, your host. I'm so delighted to be here. I love doing this show. I get great feedback. We get email messages from the website, thisweekinradiotech.com. So you're welcome to contact us through that means, or hey, hit me up on Facebook or Twitter if you like. Good places to get us there too. So as I said, I'm Kirk Harnack, the host of the show. We talk about radio technology, and that really includes everything, from audio, microphones, headphones, hey, even turntable needles. We've talked about those. CD players, digital automation and playout systems, all that kind of audio stuff, plus routing and switching and mixing and all that, audio processing and microwave links and radio towers and transmitters and then satellites and the internet. So it covers a whole lot of stuff. And today we've got a terrific guest and a great show up ahead. I'll introduce our guest in just a minute, but first, let's head out to the best dressed engineer in radio. I'm so jealous of this guy. He always looks great. It's Chris Tobin, somewhere in New Jersey. Hey, Chris. Uh-oh, he's muted, too. He didn't touch a thing, and he's muted. Now, maybe he's not muted. Maybe the mic just quit working. Well, tell you what. Chris is he's going to handle it. Okay, hang on. Well, tell you what, let's go ahead and introduce our guest. Now that you're frothing at the mouth to meet Chris, let's also meet our guest. Sheri Barclay is here with us. Sheri, welcome in. Hi.
Hi, guys. Wow, that muting was amazing.
It's every show. There's something exciting going on. And
This Week
Chris
in Radio Tech.
No.
Hey.
He will get it solved. Sometimes Chris actually does his part of the show from a park in New York City. From various interesting various balconies in New York. We get to look down at the traffic and see the beautiful sights. So, Chris, you're back with us.
Yes, it's known as static electricity, and my USB preamp just took a zap, so that's what happened. Even though Skype saw audio, it didn't pass it through.
Well, Chris, we usually do a quick little weather report from you, and I know now you're probably ensconced deep inside the hallowed halls of a radio station. Tell us what's going on today in your area.
Well, I'm in Newark, New Jersey, so to give a point of reference. And the weather outside is 43 degrees. It's comfortable. It's not as bad as it was before. The 3 feet of snow has been pretty much removed from the streets. Sidewalks are clear, and it's good. And I think they're calling for a possible snow flurry either tonight or sometime the next day or two. But other than that, things are good compared to Saturday and Sunday.
Did you really get almost 3 feet of snow?
Yeah, some areas. I was up at 4 Times Square on Saturday for some work, and I got to watch the blizzard from high atop the skyscraper at 6 a.m., and snow drifts there were about waist high. It was fun stuff. Yeah, It was a good day.
Wow. Yeah. Well, here in Nashville, we had, at the Harnack House deck, we had 8 inches of snow that was not drifting. That seemed to be a pretty level spot. And that snowfall for us was the 12th largest snowfall we've ever had in Nashville. So tied for 12th place, actually, with another year.
Wow.
So didn't set any records, but, puts us back.
Yeah, we missed a record. It was 26.8 inches in Central Park, and the last time I think they had something like that was in 1864 or something.
And some of my colleagues are posting from the Northeast, from your area, in the East Coast. They're posting pictures, with their snow blowers and all that. And we don't have that here. We don't have snow blowers. So my snow blowers were a couple of guys I met, Efren and Favio, and they took care of the 400 feet of driveway, and we share a private drive with some other houses, and so the city doesn't do anything with that. So yeah. We got out.
You can see that. Can you see that? Does it clearly come out at all?
What am I looking at?
It's a bobcat putting snow into a dumpster.
Oh, yeah, okay.
It's probably not the best you can see. Yeah.
Wow.
That
Wow.
was yesterday.
Well, good deal. Well, hey, let's bring our guest back in, Sheri Barclay, and she's in the New York area as well, aren't you, Sheri?
Yeah, and actually, I want to chime in too. If you guys can see this, oh boy, okay, that's not working. But I have a
Skype makes it
station
hard.
in Brooklyn that we're going to talk about, but I had to actually dig my radio studio out of the snow. Okay, so I can't say I've never done that one before, but yeah, so I brought a shovel and actually two guys saw me and they helped out because they saw as soon as I was shoveling that we would be open for business in April if at the rate I was going. So
Wow.
I had help as well. But yeah, now I've definitely I mean, there's a lot more to go, but I've seen quite a bit now in this crazy kind of webcasting business, and not limited to digging my station out of the snow.
Chris, you've probably had to dig a transmitter out a little bit to get to the door or something. I've never met someone like Sheri who says, "Yeah, to get to my radio station, we had to dig the studio out."
Yeah.
Yes. I have done transmitter. Yes. We have definitely removed snow from the transmitter doors a couple of times, and there's one facility where we did have the studio was snowed in. Yes, so
Wow.
it does happen.
I got to find, if anybody watching the show, or if you guys know where this picture exists, I have seen for a moment, maybe on a calendar, this has been 20 years ago, a picture of some engineers. This is in a different country, and I want to say it may have been Ecuador, but I'm not sure. But they're digging down in the snow. They're obviously in a high place, a mountaintop, a hilltop, somewhere high. They're digging down, and they just not too far below the snow, they get to the beacon at the top of the tower. I don't know where this picture is, but I sure would like to get a copy of it or find it. I don't think I'm imagining it.
Well, it could be a mountaintop radio station tower, so it's actually maybe a 50-foot tower section that's just, the building is covered in snow.
And 50, it could even be shorter. I mean, who knows? It could be a 2-bay antenna on a 20-foot tower, but it had enough snow to cover the tower, and it may have drifted, but still, it was a dramatic picture. I gotta find that. So Sheri's with us. Sheri is going to be talking to us. I met Sheri a few months ago at Zeno Radio, and they have a very interesting model for streaming audio to listeners, and she's going to tell us about that. And to help, see, it's a startup, and I find this so fascinating. And I'm not going to tell her story. Sheri's going to tell it, but they have to do some testing, and part of her testing was to build a radio studio to test the how well the software worked and how real people worked with it, so they could produce some interviews and such, and run other broadcast facilities through their studio. It's really amazing what they have done there. And then Sheri has her own online radio station, and saying the name always embarrasses me a little bit, so we'll put that off till after the first commercial, and then we'll get to it. So I'm glad Sheri's with us. She's not quite an engineer per se, but she knows how to hook stuff together, and from that perspective is really what I want to hear about. A lay person who has who knows enough to get it done and make it work. So we'll get to that in just a moment. I want to tell you that our show is brought to you in part by the folks at Axia and the Axia audio console series. It's been a while since I've mentioned to you the very smallest consoles that Axia makes. And this one you're looking at right now, this is called the Desk, DESQ. It's kind of a cute name, the Desk console. And the interesting thing about the Desk, it's really small. I mean, it's I don't know, about a foot square, roughly a foot square. It's 6 faders, linear faders. It's got OLED displays for the metering and to tell you, what profile you're in. It's got an OLED display for every input, so you can see what the source is. You can see the level coming in, the level going back out, and it's got some soft keys on there to help you navigate. Of course, it does monitoring. It's got headphone and monitor volume knobs and things like that. So it's just a great basic little console. And now it's not a standalone console. What you're looking at there on the webpage, that Desk console, is a Surface that controls what's so normal now in broadcasting. It controls a box that's called the Core, that's QOR, and it works with the Core 16 or the Core 32. They're very similar devices from Axia. One is twice as big as the other. But here's what the Core has built into it. It's got, first of all, power supplies that run it and the console. It has a DSP mixing engine. So the sources that you do bring in, you mix them together. You can do a little bit of EQ. You can do the mixing. You've got a couple of buses and mix minus available. All that's handled by the mixing engine that's in there. And then it's got an Ethernet switch built into it. So you can hook up your other live wire devices to that Ethernet switch, whether it's a phone system or a Telos VSET. You can even live wire directly to an audio processor like an Omnia 1. You can live wire directly into that. No other wiring needed except Cat5 cables. And that Ethernet switch on the back of the core engine, it also offers power over Ethernet. So you can power an Axia X node or a VSET, or you could power just any device that takes PoE, power over Ethernet. Then there's a couple other things. It's got audio inputs and outputs built into the back of the Core 16 or the Core 32. So you've got some mic preamps built into it. Analog audio in, AES audio in, analog audio out, AES audio out. All these things are all built in. Plus you've got some GPIO. So you need to light up a tally light or give a GPIO into the box to maybe turn a fader on or off. You can do all of that. It's all built in. Now, one more cool thing. Let's say if we can get a picture of the rack console, the RAQ. The rack is logically the same thing as the desk console, but it's in a rack mount version. And so it has 6 rotary faders that are on it. And but it's still got the OLED meters and the headphone and monitor volume. Works the same way. There you go. There's the rack. Now, here's what's really cool. You want to save money? You got 2 studios that are close to each other or next to each other, maybe a couple of dubbing stations. You can connect 2 of these surfaces, mix and match, 2 desks, 2 racks, or a desk and a rack. You can connect 2 of them to one of the Axia core mixing engines. And you've got 2 whole separate consoles there. They can even share inputs from that come in into the mixing engine. So you can really save money if you've got 2 studios next to each other, 2 console surfaces, I should say, go into the core, and bam. Check it out if you would. Go to telosalliance.com and click on Axia and look at the Axia consoles and check these out. I've got one of these at my newsroom in American Samoa, and it is so cool. It works great. Perfect audio all the time. Thanks to Axia for sponsoring This Week in Radio Tech. All right, moving ahead. Sheri Barclay is with us. And Sheri, I got to hear if you would tell us, how in the world did you get started in this crazy mess known as radio and streaming?
Well, first of all, can I just say that I definitely, again, I loved your introduction. It was perfect, but I'm actually shopping around for a console right now. So that thing was amazing. But
okay.
Anyway, yeah. Okay, so first of all, when I was a kid, I was a huge fan of the radio, and I used to make mixtapes. And I had a boombox with 2 cassettes and a microphone, and I would actually tape songs off the radio and do station breaks and edit them all onto a master tape, which I distributed to my friends. And then years later, I began DJing in New York City. I was a promoter all at a bunch of different clubs all over the city. And I actually took a break from promoting and I moved back to Canada where I was raised. And I started to volunteer at the college radio station in Canada, which was also on FM. So it broadcast to the whole city of about 1 million people. And it was interesting because within a year, I ended up in the kind of our equivalent of the Village Voice. And I was the 3rd top rated show in radio for the city, according to this citywide survey. And the other 2 guys ahead of me were FM guys. So I was the only woman on the list and the only independent on the list. And this was with no marketing or anything. It was just word of mouth. And it's the kind of station that, you think nobody's listening, but it was kind of amazing where I went with that. So that was the beginning. And I did that. I was on that station for about 2 years. And then I moved back. Well, I did tons of traveling, but eventually I ended up back in New York City last December.
Sounds like you got sucked into radio by music and cassettes and boom boxes. And we didn't have boom boxes when I was a kid growing up. Probably a good 15 years before you. But we sure had cassettes, and we hold them up to somebody's radio and record songs that way.
Yeah, it was very, I'm coming at it from kind of the free form music selector indie experience, which, I'm not saying that that's the biggest market or anything like that, but it is, it's a thing for sure. So that's how I got started.
So let's move to I don't know what
Yeah.
you want. You want to talk about your FM your station KPISS, or do you want to talk about Zeno first?
Well,
Where are we going with this?
I think we should talk about Zeno, but yeah, and then
Okay.
I'll kind of
All right.
transition into that. So,
So we'll tell
uh,
you here on the show, we've
yeah,
been talking over the last few weeks about streaming a lot.
yes,
I'm doing a lot
yes,
of streaming education projects for my employer, Telos. And it just so happens we've had a lot of guests to talk about streaming and LPFM radio and stream only internet stations and the music royalties and all that kind of stuff that's going on. We've talked about that
yeah,
technology some. So you work for this company called Zeno Live, and I hadn't heard of this until I got some kind of announcement or saw it maybe on Facebook before the last NAB radio show late last year. And that was just fascinating what you guys are bringing out. So give me a little bit of information
Well,
about Zeno, what you guys are doing.
well, okay. So Zeno Radio, which is our core business, it was established about 3.5 years ago, and we connect radio stations all over the world with American phone numbers, and we slowly became one of. If you ask 75% of cab drivers, Uber drivers in New York City, you ask them where they're from. Oh, I'm from the Ivory Coast, or I'm from Mali. And then all I have to say is, so how do you listen to the radio over there? And they automatically say, yes, I listen to this phone number. So we're that company. So we're actually a huge network that
So,
it's,
a radio station hooks up with your company. You make it available to listeners by the listener dialing into a phone number.
yeah, exactly. Which
Now I
sounds
guess
crazy.
as an engineer, I mean, Chris would probably agree that that sounds pretty low tech. But I know that in today's world of mass phone numbers and big public switch telephone networks and all the diversity that's going on, that actually is kind of high tech. Now the audio quality is still phone quality, but hey, if you're from the Ivory Coast and you're
Yeah.
missing your favorite DJ, back there, phone call
Not
and
only
you're
that,
hooked up.
not only that,
Mhm.
if you don't have some, not everybody has unlimited data plan.
Oh yeah.
So when you're driving around or even just at home, you can just hook up the phone and listen for hours for free.
So a lot more folks have unlimited calling than have unlimited data.
Well, and also the data is not. Wi-Fi is not perfect everywhere. I'll start talking about Zeno Live a little later, but one of the stations that I set up with Zeno Live, which is our web broadcasting software, we give you a phone number. And my friend was driving from Austin to Houston, and there's a stretch in the road between Austin and Houston, Texas, where your Wi-Fi, no matter, it just shuts off, whatever your carrier is. So he was able to listen completely uninterrupted the whole entire time by listening over the phone.
Wow. Chris
Yeah.
Tobin, a few months ago, maybe a couple of years ago, my business partner in our radio station says, "Hey, if you ever need to listen to our stations, they're now available by dialing in." Honestly,
Right.
sure. I don't know if we got hooked up through Zeno, if it was through somebody else, but and I don't even know if we still have it. I'm going to go back and have a look here. Chris, you ever heard of this? Dialing in to hear your station? Static got you again? Oh no.
No. That's quite all right. It's my thumbing
Okay.
fingers. No, yes, I've actually talked to a couple of cabbies who've been telling me that over the years. It's quite common. You know what? The phone number service sounds like it reminds me of a company, IDT. Is that right? That sounds right.
Yeah,
they were doing something
actually
like
one
that.
of the founders is involved with IDT.
Okay. I knew I
Yeah.
said it. It sounded that model sounded very familiar. I was like, oh yeah, their building is just down the block, or what's left of the building that is. So yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Yeah, no, when I'm in the city traveling around, the cabbies, I've asked them about what they're listening to. I was like, very nice. And I have several stations I listen to using my Lucy app, and I do it over IP. So similar model, but over IP data. So it's cool.
So how many people can Zeno Radio serve up by telephone?
I mean, sometimes we do, I don't know. Sometimes, well, it goes by minutes, and remember, it's free for the user and it's free for the radio stations to sign up for this.
Yeah.
But it's sometimes I look at the board and we've done 10 million minutes a day. Especially
Wow.
if there's if there's a special event like
Soccer game.
a soccer game or a trial.
Ah, yeah.
Yeah, that kind of thing.
World Cup.
Wow.
Yeah.
World, yeah.
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 And
yeah.
it's amazing to work here because we promote at all of these crazy events that, some of them I've never even heard of before, but now, I've got just kind of the key to this world. But that's not what I was hired for, because we have a brand new product, which is Zeno Live, so now we decided to, expand on this phone business by making it. At first, it was about making it interactive. So now you can actually call into the stations. So instead of just listening over the phone, you can press 5 to talk to the host directly. And we built a web streaming console, which is incredibly simple to use. You just sign up, and there's a very simple console, and you press on air, and you can start your talk show immediately and take phone calls, and people can listen through a media player and a listener page that we generate for you for free and also over the phone.
Wow. Now, I looked at this software back last fall, and I'm not sure if it was totally done at that time or not.
We're still in beta.
Still in beta. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, if I'm a regular broadcaster, I've already got a console, and maybe I've got a telephone system to take calls anyway. Can I add Zeno Live to what I'm doing?
Yeah. Well, the nice thing about adding Zeno Live to that is that first of all, we generate this phone number for you, which depending on your content, we can promote over our networks, which is super cool. And what you could do is, you could add it as an input and use that to take the phone calls, because the idea is that we wanted to give people a chance. We're not trying to replace consoles. We're trying to create a console system for people who don't have one. So if you have a console and you have that call-in service, this might not be the best tool for you unless you're looking for an easy way to connect your station to the phone number. Yeah. But if you're someone like me, a web broadcaster, and especially some of the people who I work with at my station that I'll talk about, it's perfect because it's a built-in system that works.
So at the studio end, a lot of our audience is broadcast engineers. At the studio end, let's say I don't have a console. Let's say I'm actually producing the show with your online tools, right? Yeah. So my microphone's going into my laptop. I'm talking. I could have a little mixer, I suppose, and put that into my laptop. But we'd interact with callers who would call in using your online app or a web browser.
So we give web broadcasters an app, a phone number, and people can call in through the phone number, through the app, and then also through the media player itself, which is kind of cool. So a lot of times when you're listening to audio, there's a play button, but this media player is completely interactive. It's actually, it's one of those funny things because people aren't used to interacting with their media players. You don't look at a media player and go, oh, I can press this button and talk to the host, but you can. So that's kind of cool. We just, we're still finding creative ways to get people to interact more with our particular media player.
This is actually something that one reason it resonated with me when I first heard of this was that it's always been a dream of mine to be able to interact with a disc jockey at a radio station or a talk show by listening to the show online, whether it's on my PC or on my phone, and then being able to hit a button and maybe either send text messages that I know would be read by the producer or the on-air talent, or if invited, if hit a button to make a call, if you will, and have interaction with that. Maybe even video, if that could be.
You can do that with our system. So
Yeah.
when you call in, you can type in a personalized message that the host will see. The host also gets, you can sign in through Facebook. So I would know as a host exactly who you were. And yeah, you could write something really clever that I could then say on the web broadcast and bring you on the phone. And it could be fun for contests too. We still have like tons of ways to see how people are going to use this software. But I can tell you a little bit about, our interactive station that we started here. Unless you have any more questions about the system.
Well, yeah, I'd like you to. Okay,
Sorry.
let's say that. Let's leave the complication out of it. That I'm already an existing broadcaster. Let's just go with the pure experience that you've designed the software to do. So let's say I want to start producing a little talk show about squirrels, right? And I love squirrels, and we're going to talk about squirrels. It's the Squirrel Hour every Saturday at noon. So I go sign up with Zeno Live I get a free beta sign up.
Yep.
What happens after I've signed up? What happens next?
Okay, so you sign up and then you immediately go into your console. There's a whole bunch of the great thing about Zeno Live is there's a lot of instruction, there's a lot of support. Again, a lot of people who are just starting these web broadcasts, I mean, it can be overwhelming for them, but it's very simple. You select your microphone input, you hit a big on-air button, and you're ready to go. There's another section for something called your station profile. You enter in your information, your name, your website, the genre, any links that you have. We even also have a PayPal button, so you can get started doing pledge drives right away if that was your type of thing. And you can enter in a personalized URL, click save, open that up, and you have an instant website and media player ready to go that you can share online. And of course, we have it integrated with Twitter and Facebook as well. So in seriously less than 2 minutes, your web broadcast is up and running, just like that.
Wow. Okay, so I'm up and running.
And the Squirrel Show is happening.
How do let's skip about how I.
Our first topic, Paul McCartney actually wrote a children's book, which was basically Bambi with squirrels.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
But moving on.
That we read the opening of that to get the show started every time. Hey, so okay, so what? Okay, so I'm signed up. I can broadcast with this on the web. What do my listeners have to do?
All the listeners have to do is go to the link that you provided with your media player, or you can copy and paste that player onto your website. So they can go to your website. You can select on the player whether or not you would want it to autoplay. So, you could set it up where they go to the listener page and it automatically starts playing, or it plays or you select play or not. And then on it, it says call in on the media player, but you can also instruct people during the show. You can tell them to press 5 to call in with their thoughts about squirrels, or, press the call in button on the media player. So you can share the link or embed the media player, or simply give out the phone number right away just to get started, just like that.
Is that media player, is that exclusive to my station, or can I select other shows from the same media?
It's one station per media player. Okay. So, but there is something interesting that we've done, which is, and again, this is one of the keys to successful web broadcasting, I find, and a big part of it is setting up a community. One of my favorite networks that uses us, I-95 Sports, they've actually set up 20 shows all over the country, and they log into the same account, so essentially the same media player, and broadcast. And we've actually added a really cool feature, which is co-hosting. So you can add a co-host from anywhere into the console, and both of you can control the callers, the volume, that kind of thing. So you both can run the show from the same console by adding a co-host. And it also gives the network like a nice sense of community when all of the co-hosts are signed in as individual users to the same station using the same media player.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
I think I got that. This is a concept of, hey, old-fashioned engineers. Chris, are you having to wrap your brain around this, or does this make total sense already? Sounds like the kind of thing we got to try and play with.
No, it makes total sense. You're creating a community online, or actually you're bringing people who transplant or expats their community back home or to their home. And I think it's pretty cool. And I have talked to people over the years that have done similar stuff, trying to do things in a more, I guess, primitive manner. But Zeno Radio sounds like they've found a nice way to do it, and it works very well. So I guess you guys are using what do you call it? It's like an MVNO for cellular. So you're probably working with the phone carriers with their excess, what do you call it, calling routes and stuff, and making deals.
We use that's the business side of it, but we use WebRTC. That's the technology that makes the interaction happen, and also that's right. It is a good place for the community. It's also kind of a fun experiment for people who, there's a lot of, as certain FM stations, shut down, some of these personalities, there might be like a couple month gap where they're looking for a project and they can use it right away. And one thing I want to note is that, streaming is getting cheaper and it is getting easier, but I mean, I remember trying to start a station a couple years ago and like downloading Winamp and Shoutcast and Icecast, all these things. It was so confusing to me, all of the mount ports, I mean, this, you don't have to deal with any of that. You just enter in your information, press the on air button, and you're ready to go. And for some people, setting up the streaming station the traditional way without having to download external software just to broadcast in the first place was quite complicated, and we've taken care of all of that. And you don't have to download anything. That's another thing. A lot of some of the other streaming applications, you actually have to download the web-based application, but this lives completely in your browser, which is kind of cool.
Okay.
Which makes total sense.
Yeah.
Now the radio the content creator at his or her end, that lives in the browser. By the way, while you were talking, I just signed up, and
awesome.
I thought I'd signed up before a few months ago, and I forgot my username or password, so I just signed up again. And
we'll give you 20 accounts if you want.
I signed up again, and it literally it was 15 seconds, and I was on the air. It wanted to use my microphone. I thought, oh gosh, which mic is it going to use? I got 3 mics on this computer. But so the broadcaster end is the browser. I want to make sure I understand the listener end. Is that an app that a person would download and install, or is that?
No, all they have to do is embed the media player onto their website or generate the listener page, again, which is in station profile, to get started. But we do have an app. We also offer people an app that is generated. It takes a little more. It takes about a week or so to deliver, but then once you have the app, people can search for your station in the Google Play Store and just write on their phones. But also it's all through the browser, so no downloading necessary.
Well, yeah, you said that it's using WebRTC as the technology, so yes, it totally operates in the browser.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Hey, we're going to take another break here, but I tell you, Chris, when we come back, we're going to talk about Sheri's experience in building studios. That's what I promoted for this webcast, and to test all this at Zeno, which has been a startup, and that's a fast-paced. I've been there. Oh man, fast-paced environment. You got sharp people just tripping over each other like so many startups would have. And so Sheri had to build studio, and she built a studio at her other station in what part of town is that in?
Bushwick, Brooklyn.
That's the one with that's the container. That's the container, right?
The container. That's right.
The container in the snow.
Good neighborhood.
Right. So yeah, we'll be talking about that in just a second. Hey, our show is brought to you in part by the folks at Zipstream. Now, Zipstream is a brand of the Telos Alliance, and Zipstream is the line of streaming products that Telos is making. And, you got to decide, do you like a software streaming encoder or a hardware streaming encoder? Well, with ZipStream, you do have to decide at some point, but you don't have to, compare too many different things because they got them both. They've got software encoders and hardware encoders. So to stream your broadcast station on the web, whether it's by Shoutcast, Icecast, or even some newer technology, well, you can stream directly to Wowza, to an Adobe Flash server, and now built in is adaptive multi-rate streaming. So you can stream directly to a file server using Microsoft Smooth Streaming or Apple HLS. And so these are some technologies that are coming out. I'm loving Apple HLS. It's so amazingly easy. Quality is fantastic, and it just works in so many ways. So at ZipStream, they've got a range of products from starting in the neighborhood of about $400 for the ZipStream, the first product, the ZipStream AXE. And this is a product about $400 per license per input, and from one input, you can make several encoded outputs. First of all, you can just have an audio processor because, did I mention? Audio processing is built in to every ZipStream product. So often we hear web streams that are poorly processed because maybe they're using a hand-me-down FM processor, heaven forbid a hand-me-down AM processor, or an audio processor not really meant for streaming. And there are some parameters that a bit rate reduced codec like AAC or MP3 would like to have. And they operate more efficiently if you do the audio processing correctly. And so that's built in, the 3-band Omnia processor. And on some of these ZipStream products, the Omnia 9 processing is available at an extra cost for an option. So there's the ZipStream AXE. That starts things out. But it's fully featured. It's got MP3, AAC family streaming. You can do both at the same time. You can do multiple bit rates at the same time. Just good stuff, good basic stuff. And metadata is built in as well. So you can have a metadata filter to format that correctly and get it into your stream. We also have the ZipStream X2. This is software that is capable of doing the Microsoft Smooth Streaming and the Apple HLS streaming. Then there's some hardware available. There's the ZipStream R1. I've got one of those behind me right here. You may have known it when it was introduced. It's called the ProStream. It's now called the ZipStream R1. So it's a simple piece of hardware. You plug it in, you put your audio in, configure a few things on the front panel, and away you go. And then there's the top end of the whole line. It's the ZipStream R2. This is a hoss. This is a one rack unit server power Xenon processor powered box that will take up to 8 stereo inputs coming in by LiveWire or AES audio, and it will produce literally hundreds of streams coming out. It'll produce streams of different bit rates, different codecs, HLS streams, Microsoft Smooth streams, all the stuff all at once. Plus, it has available Omnia 9 processing as well. I know I've said a lot about this stuff because there's a whole range of ZipStream streaming encoders to choose from, whatever's right for your broadcast operation, whether you're just starting out as a mom and pop or whether you're a big city cluster of stations. We've got the right thing for you. Check it out. Go to telosalliance.com and look for ZipStream. You'll find it both under the Telos line and the Omnia line because it straddles both. It's got processing from Omnia and streaming smarts from the folks at Telos. And thanks a lot to ZipStream for sponsoring This Week in Radio Tech. All right, we're here with Chris Tobin, the best-dressed engineer in radio in Newark. And also Sheri Barclay is with us. Glad to have this all-star cast here. So Sheri has been telling us about Zeno Radio, Zeno Live. And as part of Zeno Live, you had to build a studio and make it work. Tell us about that.
So they hired. So one of the founders that we have here is, he's a little bit eccentric, and once in a while we have all kinds of people. Just it's like you said before, it's a crazy environment. People come, they do projects, they go. Sometimes it's a whirlwind. So I was hired. They basically said, we have this software, why don't you make a radio station to test it, and then to fill us in on how real users are using the software, and write the reports, check for bugs, that kind of thing, but really just watching the real interaction. And you can't just do that with a couple minute tests. And so they had this room in the office where they would record a couple promos for the phone stations, but it was really just an empty room. And I said, you know what, let's take this next level. Let's really make a real station. So I started a station for the test lab called Radio Sheri. I know, very original, but that's what we came up with, Radio Sheri. And I made a WordPress site. I had a content schedule. I found a bunch of furniture. Actually, a lot of it was from thrift stores, but it looks really good. And then I had the hard part, which was convincing the company to buy Shure SM7Bs. I think I'm saying it right. Yeah, Shure. Yeah. Anyway, they're nice Shure mics, the one that Michael Jackson used, because Mark Maron, my podcast hero, was using them in his show. So I looked at his setup, and then I learned how to build a simple setup for web broadcast. So I have the Shure mics, and then I also convinced them to splurge a little on our audio interface. So we got the RME UCX audio interface, which is hooked up into a 1202 VLZ4 Mackie mixer. So that was our setup. And so when the web broadcasters would come in here for their test broadcasts, it was, a super legit experience. And also our studio is right by Madison Square Garden. So some of the sports guys who were doing shows really, really loved that. So we had Radio Sheri running 5 days a week, about 3 to 4 shows a day that were half an hour to an hour each, talk shows, taking phone calls, that kind of thing. And we had, we actually had some pretty good shows. We had one of our guests. I would find people on the internet, but also just through personalities I know comedians around New York, musicians, that kind of thing. And we had Angel Salazar doing a show, who had a small role in the movie Scarface. And he actually he was one of the most popular talk shows on the station. So it was a lot of fun.
So in building the studio, did you know anything about assembling a studio before you did this project?
No, not really. All I'd ever done was DJ, and I mean, I definitely had to do like some troubleshooting when I was DJing, and like just with the mixer, or just something not connecting. Like okay, I'm sorry. The most that I've experienced was basically I would occasionally go into a club where the turntables and the mixer were not connected to the stereo system. So I just kind of figured it out on my own. And then I did a lot of research online into simple home studios. I started with Mark Maron, and then I asked a few engineer friends of mine what they would recommend, and then I just kind of started building it from there. And now, to me, hooking up a mixer to an interface into a computer is nothing. And I'm still learning more about gains, the frequency, how to get the best sound per person. But when I started, it was definitely a bit intimidating.
You're coming to us over a microphone that we discussed a few hours ago. And tell me about this mic.
Okay, so this is sort of funny too, because when we started Radio Sheri, this test lab, I really wanted to recreate, like I wanted people on professional mics. Well, another reason too was I was doing separate recordings for promos for stations as well. But now that our test lab period is over, we want to get back to basics when using Zeno Live, because most people are going to be using either the microphone on their laptop or a USB mic. And this mic, this awesome. This is the MXL Pro Conferencing Series 1 AC404 USB. Sorry if I moved it around. This is excellent. I just have to put this thing on the table, and I can have 5 people just right around me, and it's a whole show going, and it sounds great. So I love this thing. Honestly, I know it's for conferencing, and I know that you mentioned that it reminds you of some of the mics that they mount at basketball games. But for a web broadcast, this thing is amazing. So yeah, that's what I'm using right now, and I'm still at the original studio. Now we, our testing system. We had radiosherry.com running, we were promoting it, but we still use the studio for the occasional live broadcast. And we have in-office radio shows that we do once a week called, it's really funny, we have our own internal station called The Party's Over. With the boss, and we test the system by talking about our own office politics on the station, which is insane. It's basically like listening to an episode of The Office. Like we talk about like there was a period where over 3 weeks, every episode was talking about, because we were changing the bathrooms from men and women separate bathrooms to unisex. And it was a total office debate with phone calls and everything. So we have a lot of fun here testing this system.
It sounds rather therapeutic, actually.
It is. I mean, I don't know. Someone told me that Jews invented their therapy, and there's a lot of Jews here. So I don't know if that.
Well, yeah, it sounds like y'all get to you get to vent, but it's kind of okay because you're doing it for a show,
Exactly.
Yeah.
An internal show.
Internal show.
Yeah, but I've learned, I informed so much. Well, we all did, using this product in a real studio setting. It's one of the best things we ever did here, because not only do we get to catch things ourselves, the development team they're all in house. I mean, we do outsource a few things, but most of the programmers, they all create it here. So if we found a bug or just a better way of using the system, we're able to, troubleshoot and just bang it out, like right here. And the studio is a huge part of that.
Yeah, being able to use and simulate and cause the problem and find the problem right there, right then.
Yep.
Key. Yeah.
Yep. And you can't see it, but the wall next to me is full of inspirational movies that all have to do with radio as well.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so that's pretty neat too.
Wow. Hey, Chris, this just sounds like a great idea for maybe my first Zeno live broadcast will actually be therapeutic sessions from the Harnack house, where my wife and our 5-year-old boy, and we'll get our 19-year-old daughter over here. She's full of drama. and mom-in-law, and we just sit around the table with one of those MXL mics, and we talk it out.
Exactly.
We listen, here's what you did last week that really teed me off.
Right.
And we put this on Zeno Live.
You put it on Zeno Live, and then not only that, you send grandma or grandpa the phone number, because maybe they don't want to get on the internet. But hey, you say, oh, hey, Aunt Cheryl, you can just call this number and listen to our family conference.
And we could conference her in if we wanted to, right?
She can press 5 when she wants to join the conversation.
I guess our family's probably not so interesting, but can you imagine a big Italian family?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, and I don't, hey, I don't see why not. Like, there's so many uses for this thing. I would love that. And the other thing too is it's like businesses. There's a guy who sells hot dog carts, and he does web broadcasting. Motivational speakers. There's so many ways to use this thing. So that's the story of this studio, and we're still using it to this day, and it's a wonderful thing. But when I moved to Bushwick, that became that chapter.
So yeah, we got to move into that too.
Yeah.
The other project. Now, how did you come up with this name?
Well, okay. I mean, I'll be perfectly honest with you. So there's 3 reasons for the name. So I'm from Canada, and occasionally we have a phrase called "take the piss." which basically means you're kind of like, you're kind of making fun of something. You're kind of like, deflating it a little bit. And I wanted to, I was listening to a lot of podcasts that I thought were really interesting, but it kind of felt like everybody doing the podcast was not really using it so much for expression, but they were using it as a portfolio piece to try to get a job on NPR. And I wanted to listen to podcasts that were just people kind of, being themselves and doing it they wanted to, not just because they were, trying to break into something else. And I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with that, but just as a program manager and thinking about the content, that was part of it. But secondly, it's in an alley, and it's in a 9 by 7 feet shipping container, which is located near a porta potty. So it's not a glamorous location at all. So I couldn't name it something. I can't call it something fancy because it's not. But I mean, actually, when you go in the studio, I've renovated it. It's beautiful. But I'm telling you, and when I first saw it, the last tenant, and again, I do not mean this in any disrespect at all, but the last tenant was actually, a guy who lived there. He lived in this shipping container. Bushwick, Brooklyn's a crazy place.
And let me guess, he didn't always make it out to the porta potty.
Yeah, exactly.
I feel.
And that's one of the reasons that this shipping container was available to rent. So I renovated this whole thing. I actually put a lot of money into, cleaning it up and putting new floors, walls, you name it. And then I had, all of my knowledge from setting up this studio with the Shure mics, the mixer and the audio interface. That's my my setup. I put that in there, and then I also added 2 turntables and a really nice Allen and Heath mixer. And now it's just like this cool little sound booth that all these personalities do shows with, and it's crazy. We started off with 2 shows, and now we have 27, and that's September to January doing this thing.
So if you want to find the station online, you go to KPISS,
Yes, you can say
FM.
Yeah. KPISS.fm.
We're a family show, but it's okay. We can say that.
Hey, yeah.
Have you seen the family lately?
If you say the call letter, if you say that, well, again, and somebody came in the station, and this was before I renovated it, and they said, you're crazy. What are you going to call this station? WPISS, And I said, no, but, KPISS has kind of a nice ring to it. So you go to KPISS.fm. You can listen to the shows live, and then we also have a link to our archives. And some of these shows are actually getting a lot of attention. One of our shows ended up in the Village Voice. We have another guy. He does an amazing show about surfing, winter surfing, because there's this whole winter surfing community in Brooklyn, which is really interesting. That's called Swell Season. We have another show. These 2 gentlemen, Marcus and Joel, they have a show called MTA in NYC, and Marcus actually is an intern at Sirius XM Radio, and he also used to work at Air America back in the day. So, there's a couple of radio people trickling into it too. And then there's also just Clean Forgot is an excellent show. It's this girl Erin. She's a great DJ, and she plays records. I mean, there's a show for everyone, and it's really cool for people around the Bushwick community too, because it's like, they see it, they decide to broadcast. You can listen to it, and you kind of you really feel like you're there. And actually, there's a subway that goes by, and you can hear like just a hint of the subway.
Sure.
But it's
actually, that's good to know, because I want to come visit, and I want to know how close it was to a subway stop. So there you go. It's close by.
You are absolutely welcome to do a show at the station anytime. My show is live Sundays 3 to 4. I have a show where I actually, speaking of the family thing, I call my mom on my show. That's what I do. I call my mom, and then I also have another show where I speak with people from online dating apps as well. It's kind of like a pre-screening live podcast thing. So and it's fun because I'm marketing, I'm a marketing software, and I'm dealing with radio, and I deal with a lot of different types of people, corporate, that kind of thing, and this is just like a really nice, just like free expression place to kind of go crazy, before I rein it in for other projects.
So that website is kpiss.fm, kpiss.fm.
Yeah,
Now,
and I
you said you have 27 shows. Is the station actually streaming 24 hours a day? Do you have some automation running, or is it only when there's a live show?
This is really interesting. So I did different experiments where I would play archives in place when it wasn't running. But I found that I've actually gotten more fans and more engagement when I only have it streaming live when it's live. So when it's not live, there's an indicator that tells you that we're off the air, so you can't hear anything. But there's a chat room when the hosts are there. So every time we're live, the listeners know that there's actually a human being there and not just a playlist. Because that's the thing, is there's so many online radio stations out there that are just, voice tracked and playlists. And that's totally cool, but I'm trying to do something where you always know that somebody's there. And it's actually my dream, my goal, hopefully, is to get it running at least a couple days a week, 24 hours a day. And we're getting close. Sundays, we have shows running from 10 o'clock in the morning to 1 o'clock in the morning straight, which is pretty cool. Yeah. And I will personally dig the station out of the snow if I have to.
So Chris was just saying nothing sells like live content.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's true.
And that's actually a pretty good idea to yeah, there you go. To there's something back when FM radio was kind of beginning and it was cool and there were underground rock stations, right? And there was something just kind of special about that. It seems like you only streaming when there's a live show. Like right now, it's off. There's an indicator on your Mixlr page there that says off air. Yep. So it does seem kind of precious, special, perishable, when it's only on the air when there's somebody live.
Well, listen, like if you're gonna do something like this, I'm not saying you have to, but for me, I'm in New York City, and there's a lot of competition for attention here. So I've got to do something different. It's got to be live, and I got to call it KPISS, because that name, it sticks and it's live. And so far it's been working. It's been working fabulously. So yeah.
Well, don't forget, Kirk. If you want to do a little history, early days of radio, going back to the 30s and 40s, was not 24 hours a day. It was only when it was live, and that was the heyday, and that's what started it. The 24-hour non-live elements became just part of a business model, and that was just to extend to try and make more money. That was it. It had nothing to do with content creation. And like I said, I've worked at radio stations where we had signal strength that was pretty much in the noise, but because the content we were creating and the engagement that we did way before social media, way before all the stuff we're now accustomed to, was popular. I worked at a station in Connecticut. We had listeners in Brooklyn and Queens, and I would tell them, please put your radio up to the phone. I want to hear what it sounds like. And I kid you not, there was probably 50-50 audio and static, and all they wanted to hear was our guys having fun, playing the music and talking about stuff in between the songs. That was like 1986, 87. So that same thinking, fast forward to today, now the entry to the barrier to entry is minimal with the internet delivery or any other method you choose. And Sheri's right. You're live, it's perishable, but it's about engaging the person. And human nature is all about conversation. And it's a friend of mine who's a programmer. We've always had these conversations like, I don't understand why people don't get it. It's like, this is the best thing you can do. And the best place to do it is in Brooklyn.
Yeah. Yeah, so we're bringing it back. We're bringing it back.
When's the next live show, Sheri?
Oh, the next live show, let me check the program schedule here. I should, of course, have this memorized, but the next live show is the Thursday. What are we? Thursday. Okay, so 7 to 9 p.m. is a music promoter named Casey Kirkland. She does these crazy punk shows all over the city, and her show is called High Waisted. And it's 7 to 9 p.m. And actually, she did an interview with someone who recorded a hip hop album entirely at the Apple Store over 3 months. And,
Gosh,
and
wow.
sold it. Yeah,
I read that article.
That was one of her first interviews, and it was amazing. And the really cool thing is, she actually has blogs being written about her show already too. So some of these shows are, they're already going out there and getting their own press and that kind of thing. I'm really proud of her.
Wow.
She does a great show, and you can listen to that live from 7 to 9 p.m. And you
That's
can
about an hour-
chat with her too.
Yeah. And that's
Yeah.
about an hour from now, actually, as
Yep.
we're recording the show. Yeah,
That's
very
right.
cool. Hey, we have got to hit our last sponsor here, and both of you, if you can think of a good tip, something you'd like to leave our listeners with, Sheri, especially if you want to give people a tip about some studio building thing that you found. We didn't get to talk about that as much as I wanted to. So if you had a final technical tip, that'd be super. Chris, same for you. You've always got something like, oh my goodness, what a great idea. So we'll check that out in just a minute. Our show, This Week in Radio Tech, is brought to you in part by the folks at Lavo, Lawo. They're a German company that makes audio consoles. And I know I tell you every week, but I'm going to tell you again. They have the technology for making these enormous audio consoles that have huge amounts of channels, in-source channels and outgoing buses, surround sound. They make all kinds of tools for multi-channel surround sound. And they have long been on the cutting edge of that kind of high-tech, high-quality audio, usually in live sound venues or in TV trucks, TV production, that kind of thing. Well, they're in the business of making smaller consoles for smaller broadcasters, radio stations, and so forth. And they have a line of consoles called their Crystal series. Well, we're talking about their Crystal Clear console. This is what they call a virtual radio mixing console because the mixing surface, the thing you touch, is actually a multi-touch touchscreen. It doesn't have any real faders or knobs, doesn't have, real buttons to push. They're virtual buttons. But they've been able to lay this out with nice big buttons. They are finger-sized, and today's touchscreen technology works really smoothly. In fact, it's a 10-touch touchscreen. So if you ever have used, a really high-quality touchscreen like you might find on a good iPad, you're going to find that same kind of quality feel in the Crystal Clear console. Now, the part that does the work, the heavy lifting, if you will, that has all the audio inputs and outputs and the DSP engine and all the decision making, well, that's in a rack mount box. That's a 1RU box that sits in a rack. It's got available dual redundant power supplies. It has network connectivity on it to do two things. The network connectivity, number one, to connect to the Surface. That is it's actually a PC running this app that makes it look like a beautiful 8-fader radio mixer surface. So you have a network connection to that. That means, by the way, network connection, that means that, hey, if you, for some reason, hey, they're cleaning the studio, we need to move to a different room. Fine. Unplug, take the clear part, the mixing console part, take that to your office. Take it somewhere else on the LAN, plug it in, boot it up. You're reconnected back to the mixing engine part and do your show. It's just amazing what this thing can do. One of the other cool things is when you design a console totally in software, you can make everything very contextual. You no longer have to have a situation where you've got to scroll through menus to find what you want to do. When you push an options button on a fader on the Crystal Clear console, it knows what you're doing already. And so it has just the things that you may want to do with that fader, not stuff that you couldn't do because you don't need to see that. It has auto mic gain setting. So if you have some people come in for a talk show, you can have them speak for a moment while you push a button. And as you're doing that, the mic gain is automatically set on the mic preamplifier. Michael Dosh has a video explaining how the Crystal Clear console works. If you go to lawo.com and go to the Crystal Clear page, the page that's all about this product, in the upper right-hand corner of that page, you'll find a video. Click on that. Mike Dosh explaining, there's a picture of it over on the right-hand side of your screen. Mike Dosh explaining what the Crystal Clear console does, the concept behind it, and how people are enjoying using it. Thanks very much to Lavo for sponsoring This Week in Radio Tech. I'm Kirk Harnack, along with Chris Tobin and our guest, Sheri Barclay. And let's see, who wants to go first with their tip? Who's ready?
I'm ready.
I'm ready.
Oh, you're both ready? Good. Ladies first. All right, Sheri,
Okay.
go ahead.
Okay, well, I just want to thank you guys for being on the show. I'm sorry that I didn't quite get into the gearhead stuff as much. Again, it's just kind of about getting up and running. For me, I guess my tip would be, I just kind of want to tell you about my process, which is I found out what my favorite podcaster, Mark Maron, was using, and then I Googled and I somehow found my way on different sound forums, and I would just kind of be, a lot of just different forums would come up based on the gear that I was researching. I always like to see what's going on at like Sweetwater Audio. I get emails from them. That's pretty interesting. And I'm also slowly trying to learn how to build different things for sound effects and things around the studio. And I really like Instructables.com. I'm slowly teaching myself about Arduino to make cool things for the station. So yeah, Instructables.com, and just kind of seeing where Google takes you. And again, I'm very interested in content, and I listen a lot to a podcast called The Spreaker Live Show with Rob Greenlee, and he interviews lots of podcasts, and again, you can just research these people, find their setup, and then Google where that takes you.
I love Instructables. That is so cool. I hadn't seen it till now. So thank you. That tip is amazing.
It's awesome.
Oh, all these things you can build.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Oh man, I'm gonna. I see hours going down this hole. That's awesome. Thank you for that tip, especially Instructables. All right, and Chris Tobin, what you got for us for your tip?
All right. A reminder, since Sheri was talking about studio building and things that she come across when the mixers didn't get connected to turntables and all that sort, don't forget the guys at Whirlwind have that nice little box for different connectors. I know it may seem like over the top for some people, but believe it or not, this will save you bacon on many occasions when you're doing cabling, say with a Mackie, 1402 or 1604, and you got to use RCA cables. You're not sure if they're good or bad because you find them in the bottom of a box. You could take it, plug it into this little box here, this little black box as it's known, flip on the switch, and you see the little LED light flashing, and you press the button, and it tells you whether or not the conductors are working the way they should. So that quickly gets you out of the trouble of, hey, why isn't this working? Maybe using quarter-inch connectors. Mackie mixers are known for quarter-inch connectors. People love to use those. Again, the same thing. You plug it into the little box, and look what you get. You get the little display going. It tells you what you have. So that's my tip. It's well worth the investment, and for podcasters and people who are working in Sheri's similar situation where you're helping and building other facilities for people, travel with this. It'll come in very handy. I actually used it last weekend at a broadcast I did in Philadelphia for a podcasting small radio network that does hockey shows, and they gave me a box of cables. Said, we don't know what's wrong. 10 minutes later, we found a problem. So well worth it. That's my tip. And the other thing is, keep it simple. For those of you who are doing podcast construction and home studio stuff, keep it real simple. And that MXL mic was a boundary microphone. Very popular, believe it or not, in stage and concerts, not only conference rooms. Crown developed those way back in the 80s. And since then, they've become very popular. And they're actually very handy. But you got to make sure the room is somewhat quiet. Otherwise, you get into trouble with them.
Chris, my video has stopped. And so I'm going to ask you to look at the camera and talk us out of the show. Thank everybody, and tell them we'll be back next week. Sheri, thank you. Sorry you can't see me, but that's okay. We can see you, and right. I'll let Chris talk us on out. He's great at that.
All right, fair enough. All right, folks, this is the conclusion of This Week in Radio Tech, episode 289, with our guest Sheri. And let's see, it's Zeno Live Radio or Zeno Radio, I should say.
ZenoLive.com and KPISS.FM.
All right, so KPISS.FM and This Week in Radio Tech have made some new friends today. And those in the audience, remember, check out the downloads later and check out what Sheri is talking about with all the various programs. It's all about the content. At least that's my perspective as well. And being a native of the borough of Trees, known as Brooklyn, that's the place to start this kind of stuff. And Bushwick is a great neighborhood to start it in. So once again, I'm Chris Tobin. Our host, Kirk, is frozen somewhere in time. Then again, I got to get my sonic screwdriver for that one. And then our great guest, who I'm sure we'll have back, or Kirk's going to make a visit to the trailer or the container and check out kpiss.fm. Shipping container. It's stationary, though, but when Kirk arrives, maybe we can find something else to do. In any case, This Week in Radio Tech concludes episode 289. Thank you very much.